Hey everyone, it's Dr. McDonald. This is the reaction to the reflection assignment, the first one that you submitted last week. And what I'd like to do is just go over some of the major issues that you all wrote about in your paragraph when you sent them to me. A lot of them echoed each other as far as I definitely saw some themes, which I'm going to touch on, while at the same time trying to make sure I address just about every concern that all of you had. So, first of all, I want to give you one essential tip that should be taken for granted, but isn't always. Having done this class for a number of years, once upon a time it was a face to face class. And what I've often noticed, which is surprising when you consider this is an online class, is that students don't always watch those videos, those video tutorials. Make sure that you do. Several of the topics that we're going over, several of the concerns that you had reading your reflection assignments will be covered in the first video tutorial from this week. So look at those, watch the whole thing. It is going to go over sources and how to use sources and the difference between sources. So the class is very straightforward as far as the fact that you need to have primary sources and secondary sources. I'm assuming now you know the difference between them. The video talks about it in some detail if you need a bit of a refresher. You need to have a majority of your secondary sources come from monographs, which are books, whole actual books that you get in those buildings where the books live, which should be the starting point for research, but always is not the starting point for research. So primary sources don't just have to be dusty old documents, or if you go to the archives over at the library here at NSU and you're going to look through individual papers of someone, you can get collected primary sources, and I cover that in the video. The other essential tip that I have for you is read the book. The book is not just random assignments, just so that you do some reading in addition to all the other research you have to do. The reading as it is assigned every week directly results and directly connects to the actual assignments that you will need to take up. So on top of that, the book is also, and this is now responding to one concern that several of you had, is citations. At the very back of the book, we used to assign this book and then some kind of style guide. This book is a style guide. So in the back of the book, you will see the methods by which you need to do citations. And you're going to do two types of citations in the course of this class. Obviously, you need to turn in a bibliography. That will be at the conclusion of your paper. You'll have a working bibliography. That's one of your early assignments. If you don't use everything in your bibliography, you can take it off the bibliography in the final draft. I don't expect, I'm not going to go back and check that your final paper, final bibliography looks exactly like the one you submitted early in the semester. Obviously, you're going to take some things off. You have to have this assignment. You have to complete primary and secondary sources in your bibliography, and then some of them that you put on there you will not use. So how to do the research is part of the textbook reading. I can lead you there and I can give you suggestions, but I think the book is particularly helpful. So we're jumping around in it. Early on, you're reading about how historians evaluate evidence, the different kinds of evidence, and what it all means to the historical profession or any other critical thinking professions that you're going to go into. Research, citations, documentation is part of graduate school and a number of other careers, including going into the law. And you're going to spend hours on your behind doing research or doing case law or anything else. And so those are two of my first early suggestions. I only say watch the videos. Again, it should be obvious, but I would used to meet students who I said, I covered this in the video. I didn't watch it. Well, watch it. Every video is going to be a tutorial on how to do the next assignment that you've got due. And then you have these, where I react, because every semester is different. What one group of students says in the spring of 25 is different from the students in the spring of 24. So one of the biggest issues as we get into the details is how to narrow your topic. And I would give you just one piece of advice. time and space. Okay, everyone is concerned. Oh my, 12 to 15-page paper. Yeah, it's significant. And what you will need to do is make sure that you narrow your topic. Your topic has to be very concise, very concise. And so the thing that you want to do when you are faced with a 12 to 15-page paper is do a big, unmanageable topic. Mostly those have been written before. And so you want to avoid those. The other thing to keep in mind as you do watch the first video tutorial is that there are certain banned topics, meaning ones I just don't want to read any more papers about. So if you had any of those in mind, you cannot do them. I'm talking things like the Battle of New Orleans, Hitler, the JFK assassination. There's a whole list and I don't even remember all of them. So go back and watch that video. One, because they're too broad of a topic. And so that, I think, is something that I saw in your reflection assignments. Topic's too broad. How do I focus it and narrow it down? So I would give you, that's the biggest piece of advice, time and space. Confine your research to a certain number of years if you're looking at a big topic. The civil rights, the WPA in Louisiana, anything like that. You can do a topic on world history. You can do a topic on U.S. history, but you have to make sure it is a historical topic. You will be able to find the sources, and it seems like, no, I can't. You will, because you'll learn how to use databases. The thesis is also important. You're going to develop a thesis after you do some of the initial research. So obviously you have a topic, but from that topic comes your thesis. It is an argument, some have called it. It is a theory. It is a contention. Let's jump around and maybe give you kind of an aid that we can concentrate on here. I am reading this book now, and it's kind of lecture prep and rethinking some of the issues in early American history and during the aftermath of the Revolution. This book is subtitled Orchestrating the Second American Revolution, 1783 to 1789. So what I'd like to emphasize to you is that you need to, when you pick up books, not do an internet search for articles. When you pick up an actual book, read the intro of the book. It's not a few annoying pages that you have to skip through to get to, chapter 1. The book, something like this, a secondary source, all right, is written about the past, but this is written in the 2000s. It's a secondary source. So Professor Ellis is arguing, essentially, there was a small group of individuals who were trying to bring about a second founding moment. In this case, it's the road to the Constitutional Convention, basically arguing that the United States was, as it was constituted in 1783, militarily weak, politically weak. And so his thesis, and you can read it, and they're going to explain, these authors, they're going to explain in their intro what their argument is. That traditionally, the argument for some historians is that the writing of the Constitution is something of a way to pump the brakes on the forces that were unleashed in the American Revolution. Ellis's contention is that the collaboration of this group, and these 4 individuals are part of it, was not a betrayal, you might say, of the American Revolution, but as he says, it's a quite brilliant rescue. And so these group of individuals, often called the nationalists because they wanted a stronger national government, he evaluates the reasons. It wasn't for money, but it was to take the idea that the American Revolution could function on a national scale. And so this is the thesis. This is his argument. You're not summarizing what this author writes, but that's the thesis. So again, a time and space. This is a very short period of time over a given number of years. He's fortunate that he has a lot of primary sources because he's dealing with the founders, Washington, Madison, Hamilton, and at the bottom there, John Jay. All right. So that is where you're going to take your topic and then develop it into a thesis. Okay, so the topic has to be narrow and the thesis has to be an argument. We'll use examples of it. We'll talk about them in some detail. I think the book uses one that is there. I've used it in the video. It's the idea that who was the first person to sign the Declaration of Independence? Well, we can figure out who that was. But a thesis statement would be, why did the artist of the famous painting of the signing, he chose to do X, Y, and Z for the following reasons. Okay, so that is a thesis. So some of the other issues, selecting sources, that certainly was um, uh, a refrain I heard several times. The best sources are academic sources. Okay, these are vetted through a process of editing from the publisher. They are peer reviewed. So you want to start with a combination of primary and secondary sources, but I can't stress this enough. The book I just showed you is a monograph. It is basically a book that essentially says, okay, we've got this story we're going to tell. We're going to integrate primary and secondary sources. And in the back of that book, I've said this to classes and in other settings. You know, you're going to look at the back of the book and you will see what the sources the author used and the bibliography. If you pick up a book on your topic, that bibliography of the book is going to send you to other sources. And then maybe after that, at some point, you get on the computer. So certainly, books, traditional books, are a starting point. The best sources, that's kind of a loaded concept. But I would just tell you your sources have to be a combination of those two types, primary and secondary. Journals, certainly, but I don't want kind of a literature review of the best journal articles you found online doing an internet search. So that's why when you take this information, and you're going to use parts of some books and not the whole thing, and certainly when I cobble together lectures, I'm going to have 4 or 5 books open at the same time with primary sources, and you're going to constitute from that a story. You need to take notes. You need to keep an outline and organize yourself. You need to, I don't know, speak in a audio file about some of the sources you have. Use index cards to keep everything straight and keep your primary and secondary sources. Again, make sure you know which is which. So that's another research tactic. And that goes into the book. The book gives you tips on how to do that. Using the library became another issue I saw in the reflection assignments. You're going to have a library consultation either with Miss Anna or Miss Donna. Contact them. Their information is there in Moodle when we get closer to that. And they're going to help you navigate the different sources of information. They're going to know about the assignment. They're going to know about this class. And you can use them more than once, but they're going to orient you on your topic. Their job is not to help you come up with a topic, help you write a thesis statement. It is to lead you to the way to find the sources that apply to what you are talking about. And that's why it's mandatory that you meet with them and report back. And those faculty at the library would also talk to me about that, verify that you visited by phone or directly or by some kind of video conference. The last major issue I saw was citations, as far as was mentioned. You're going to have citations there as far as how to do them in the book. At the back of the book, there's 2 different ways to do it. You have a bibliography, which is done one way, and you will use footnotes or endnotes, which is done a different way. You can use either one. Endnotes are at the end of the paper. Footnotes are in the foot of each page of the paper. In addition to that, you will have also a bibliography. So how the information is in there, which information you need to put in there is a guide to it in the back of the book. I will give you examples, and you will also start understanding the way to do that by submitting. When you talk about your book review, you're going to submit the topic that you want to review. You're going to submit it as a footnote and or endnote and as a bibliographical reference. So that's a first way to get started on that. So again, hope this helps. It's a very brief kind of synopsis of some of the issues that you mentioned individually. going forward, and we'll have more resources in the video tutorials.